I'm so antsy.
Don't be antsy.
It's going to be okay.
It's going to be okay.
It's been.
So Lilith.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
You describe who you are because I don't really know how to describe it. How would you describe yourself?
Well, I'm large. I contain multitudes. So right now I would say burlesque, performing, fetishist, poet, figuring it out.
Like we all are.
Like we all are, yes.
How old are you?
I am 24. I'm 24 now.
You're still a kid. And how did you get into being a burlesque performer?
I was living in Dallas for a year. It kind of just happened. And it had been several years since I had been actively participating in dance. And so I was looking for a dance studio. I was looking for something to do for myself. I had started working as a behavioral therapist, and so I needed the art. And so I found an aerial studio, which I'd never done before. And so after being there for a couple months, there was a student performer showcase, and I saw burlesque was listed as an option. And I was like, okay, like, fuck it, I'm gonna do it. Like, I think that's something I can do. And pretty much everyone performing was a pole performer. And I was the only person who did burlesque. And that's just kind of how I started. I didn't know anything about it. And I've been doing it for about a year now.
But before we get started, tell me about your waist. You have the tiniest waist I've ever seen.
This corset, It's
a corset that's making it so small?
I mean, the corset is definitely defining the shape.
But you must be small just to be able to fit into something like that.
Well, I am a small person, yes. Yes, but yeah, I would ideally like one even smaller. This one's pretty comfy.
So the corsets are uncomfortable?
No, they shouldn't be uncomfortable, but it's definitely restrictive. But no, it should be comfortable. A good corset should fit comfortably, even if you're totally cinched up.
I detect an accent. Where are you from originally?
Well, I was born in Glendale, here in LA.
That explains the accent.
But I'm Armenian.
You're Armenian?
Yes.
So that's a little bit of an Armenian accent you got from your parents or from somewhere?
That's what I'm guessing, because I feel like the older I've gotten, the more and more it's kind of like coming out. It also depends on the context. Like if I'm feeling a little bit nervous, like I'm on the spot for an interview, versus if I'm hanging out with my friends, right? Then I feel like my cadence maybe changes a little bit. But yeah, I mean, I definitely, like as a kid, I used to say museum instead of museum, because that's how my mom would pronounce it, So it definitely has an effect, the sociocultural context.
So you're a burlesque performer, but you have this fetish kink slant to it.
Yes, I mean, this is kind of the root of it all, I would say. Mm-hmm. Like I don't remember the defining moment, but I remember at some point in high school, and then graduating and getting to college, I was 17, turning 18, and I knew I was kinky. I don't know how I knew it, but it was. There was no like defining moment, I want to say, but
And nothing in your childhood that.
No significant.
Nothing inappropriate with anybody.
No significant event like that. I remember. I mean, now in retrospect, and I can look back, and I'm like, okay. There was one, like the oldest neighbor I had in our building, this old man. Like I definitely like was curious, like anytime I would see him walking outside, I would just watch, it didn't like, I mean, in childhood, it didn't stem from anything sexual, I want to say. But like now that I'm into much older men, and I have been for a very long time, I'm like, oh, like that makes sense now as to why I was so curious. Or like, I remember specifically in the live action Scooby-Doo film, there's a scene where Velma comes out in this like red latex catsuit. And I remember being a kid and being like, I like that. Like, and now I understand that I wanted to A, be in the latex catsuit, and B, I like women. So now in retrospect it makes sense. But yeah, there wasn't like a defining moment. I just remember like turning 18 and going like, okay, how am I gonna find people who can, who are kindred in these things, who I can kind of explore with? And I looked up dungeons in LA, and I started working at a dungeon.
And you do this professionally?
I used to do this professionally. That's how I started. I started out working professionally as opposed to partaking in my personal life. So professional came first, which is funny. I just dove in head first in the deep end.
What do you think the attraction is for you?
The initial attraction or what has persisted?
Both.
The initial attraction, I mean, there's the novelty that plays a huge part, right? Here is this thing I have never experienced.
Something alternative and different and
yeah,
a little bit strange.
A little bit strange and unusual, like myself. I am definitely into things that are taboo. They pique my interest. I want to say I definitely had a higher risk profile when I was 18 as opposed to now, which developmentally makes sense. I mean, you're using primitive parts of your brain before your prefrontal cortex fully develops, right? So I was like, I can do this. Where maybe now I would think of consequences a little more. But yeah, the taboo, the novelty, just feeling an intense draw, like just the physical pull I felt towards it. I was like, no, this is something I'm gonna like. I mean, I have no idea how it will go, what will happen, but I think it's right. And I when I got there, I was like, yes. and to this day, I mean, it's so vast. It's so vast. Like, I truly believe anybody, even in the vanilla world and vanilla context, can find one thing in the kink, in the BDSM fetish community that they identify with and relate to. So I think it's a little, it can be universal if applied. And so I have, been in my personal life just slowly figuring it out, how it fits into my life. And I'm at a really wonderful place with it right now.
That's great. With burlesque, now burlesque used to be something that was for real. There were actually burlesque clubs. I remember when I was a kid in Chicago, they were like driving by, like, oh, what is that? And it's like, and I never went in. I was too young, I think. But there were big buxom women with like lingerie and a big feather boa and
yes,
doing their thing. That doesn't exist any longer, I don't think, anywhere on planet Earth. But you're doing is like a throwback to that?
Yes,
with some modern twists?
Definitely. I mean, the style I do would be considered neo-burlesque, which was kind of, Catherine Delish and Didavantes have really kind of brought it back full force. And Didavantes does have a residency in Vegas right now. But yeah, I don't think there are no designated, places for it now.
So where do you perform?
Basically freelance work. So wherever I get hired, I recently performed for the Punk Rock Museum in Las Vegas and the Golden Tiki Bar there. I'll perform here in LA and San Luis Obispo. I've performed for the Seattle Erotic Art Festival.
After this video, you'll probably get some bookings.
Well, I hope so. Yeah, I do my own thing. I definitely, I'm inspired by classic burlesque, and I throw in a little bit of bump and grind, but I definitely do my own thing. I bring some fetish to it. I like dancing to Typo Negative. I'll throw in some classic music in there, but I definitely like to just do my thing.
And burlesque for you is not necessarily, you're not getting naked. You're just dancing in these.
I will get down to panties and pasties, but if I'm allowed to be topless, I will almost always do it.
Okay.
But yeah, there's like restrictions on it based off of I think it's laws and regulations with alcohol and being on stage,
Yep.
like the proximity. So
The law always gets involved.
the law always gets involved.
And do you find your interests in these alternative things are growing as you get older, or are they kind of just they stay where they're at?
I mean, it definitely doesn't stagnate, because I feel like as human beings we shouldn't, and I just don't. But I think in some ways it's becoming more refined. And I think a lot of that has to do with interpersonal relationships and what is most valuable to you based on what point in your life you are. And so in some ways, yes, it's growing and expanding, but definitely changing. And perhaps the way I kind of dance with it has become more refined, as opposed to, being 18 and being like, well, yeah, bring it on, you know? I think there's a little more context now in my life, perhaps.
Were you always kind of alternative and a kinkster rather than vanilla, or did it come from vanilla?
Like the initial memory that comes to mind is me being 14 and having my first boyfriend. And it was of course like a very vanilla little relationship.
Mm-hmm.
I just remember that I was more ready to jump into sexuality than he was. And that was the demise of my little 14-year-old relationship, was that I was posting photos of myself online that were, I don't know, maybe sexy by nature. And he had a problem with it and broke up with me. So that's not necessarily anything like kinky that occurred, but, you know, I had, I guess, an interest in it. And it wasn't until, I started actually engaging in sexual relationships where, from the get-go, I wanted things outside of just vanilla mechanical, you know, A plus B is this. And I just couldn't find people for it. You know, like when I say hit me, I mean hit me harder, like not just like a little like, you know. So that was, I guess, the beginning. Or the
So what kind of things are you into? It sounds like a little bit of an exhibitionist.
Definitely a little bit of an exhibitionist, and a little voyeuristic. I think that definitely is like a part of my burlesque too. It's not sexual what's happening. I'm not getting anything sexual out of it, but the power exchanged with the audience, like I'm there being an exhibitionist and I'm observing the voyeurs. So in a way, I am also a voyeur in that. So definitely, power exchange is a big thing for me. Power dynamics.
Do you like being the sub or the dom?
I am a sub through and through, but it takes the right dynamic, the right person for me to really immerse in it. So I happy. I love impact play, very much into bondage, all forms of bondage. I recently, my partner and I, we had a shibari performance for this like techno event. So that was super fun, getting to, you know, do what we love.
Shibari is where you're tied up with rope, and it's more of a performance than a private thing.
What Japanese rope bondage, where you're like suspended. It doesn't have to be performative.
Oh, it doesn't?
No, I mean, because when we do it, you know, at home in private, you know, it's just for us. But you can definitely, there's more room to play around with dynamic movement, I want to say, in a suspension. So if you are doing a performance, especially if you're doing it in a vanilla context, right? There's nothing kinky happening at this like techno event, except for, the spectacle that is us or me inverted in the air, So you definitely have a little more wiggle room for, I like to be like swung like violently back and forth and spin. So I suppose that becomes a spectacle, but it's not like what drives me to do it. It's just, it can be fun when the audience is receptive to it.
Do you enjoy being kind of different than the crowd? Misunderstood, perhaps?
I don't think it's a matter of if I enjoy it. I think it's just kind of always been the case, I want to say. I just realized I have lipstick on my teeth that I never wiped off. So I'm sorry if you can see it. But the first thing that comes to mind is like Edward Scissorhands when he's walking through the, perfect little cookie cutter suburban neighborhood. And so, I mean, I've kind of just like always felt that way. And I think a big piece of that is the cultural background I come from. I am kind of an anomaly in that sense. Or if people do, have the same interests as me, it's definitely not something I've seen or found. Like that doesn't, exist. I think I've run into one other Armenian woman in the entirety of like my kink life. So I want to say in like 6 years. So that has definitely played a big piece in me feeling misunderstood, just because I'm like, not that I'm insubordinate, but by nature, I deviate from the norms. And so I have to embrace the insubordinate role, because the only other option is to, just
be bored.
Be bored, not to be yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I've definitely like paid the price to be who I am, but like this is my life. I can't live it for anybody else. Everyone else is gonna die, and if everyone else did die, then what would I be left with? Myself. And so why would I sacrifice being my honest self when you have to be a little selfish in that context?
You mentioned the movie Edward Scissorhands.
Yes.
This is a question I probably should ask more people. What are your favorite movies?
Requiem for a Dream, number 1. Wrist Cutters, A Love Story. Leon the Professional. There's so many good films, but that is my top. I've narrowed down. That is my top 3.
And your sense of style and all that kind of either works with those movies or comes from it.
I'm sure we're all just little puzzle pieces of the things that we love.
Our favorite movies can tell people a lot about ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, Requiem for a Dream just has a fabulous score. Mm-hmm. It's visceral and
when the movie's right, it's just like everything about it is just right. The music, the everything.
Yeah, and it's funny you asked that question about being a little misunderstood, but most people who I talk to about that film are either like, fuck that movie, I can never watch that again. Like, they have these like
that means you should watch it 10 times.
Yeah, you gotta. Yeah, like I have like an annual like I like it. I like things that evoke feelings, no matter how uncomfortable, whatever the range of emotion is. I think we should feel all of it. Mm-hmm. That's what we're here for.
Yeah, I love movies that kind of touch on all of the emotions, mm-hmm. not just this one or that one, but like everything. Mm-hmm. Sad, happy, humorous, all of it, tragic, everything all wrapped into one.
Yes. Yeah, I have a knack for the sads.
Like life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Happiness is not constant. I think we get little bursts, but it's constantly changing. Yeah.
What was your childhood like? You mentioned your Armenian mom.
Yeah. I mean, I really don't know how to answer that question because I just have like snapshot memories.
But you had both parents?
I had both parents, yeah. I lived both parents, grandmother, older brother.
Your dad was Armenian as well?
Yeah. My dad he was born in Iran and moved to Armenia when he was really young. So he's both Iranian and Armenian, but he had that kind of, big shift when he was a kid.
Are they similar cultures?
Similar cultures. Armenians kind of had to disperse to neighboring areas, like following the genocide in 1915, and so you'll meet a lot of people who are like Syrian Armenian, like from Russian Armenian. But I grew up with more so a Armenian raised in Yerevan, Armenia kind of culture in my house. So I'm just like learning some Persian things now, or like trying to like, dig up some old things. But yeah, I mean, like my childhood was secure in the ways it needed to be, right? Like I always had shelter, I always had food. So those kind of like bottom level of Maslow's hierarchy, right, where those needs were met. But I remember just it being hard to navigate emotionally. I was very sensitive and shy. And so, I learned if you were having like big emotions, right, you need to go off and be alone, right, like until you're calm. And so I think that's something that has been affected me, and I've like kind of had to navigate for the entirety of my life. Yeah, like my parents were definitely like pretty cold. We weren't like they're not very affectionate, like I remember before I would go to bed, like up until a certain age, I don't know, maybe it was like 6 or 7, I don't know at this point, but my mom, like she would tell me like this little what are they called, not like a nursery rhyme almost in Armenian, and so like every night I would go up to her and ask her to say it to me. But like at some point, like that just kind of stopped. Like at some point, like I don't even remember like saying I love you like to each other. Like it just, yeah, like that kind of stopped. And I feel like now, I spent a lot of years not talking to my parents. And so now that I'm at least reconnecting with my mom, like I'll text her, I'll be like, I love you, which is so strange, So yeah, I mean, childhood was like secure, safe, physically, right? But definitely emotionally a little bit difficult to navigate. And maybe like, if you want to describe it in a sense, it could be like emotionally invalidating, right? Or kind of like shame in having emotions that aren't just like happy, so.
But what kind of teenager were you?
Depressed. I was a sad teenager. Yeah, like I turned like about 12, and I kind of just, and it makes sense. You go through a lot of changes. I mean, in the context of just being 12 in middle school, I mean, like, I don't think that was a good time for anybody. And if it was, like, that's weird. I don't trust you, right? And then you have puberty, so
you're peaking too soon.
So you're just having like all these like bodily changes, and it's a lot at once. Like there are a lot of studies that have shown that females especially are prone to have a decline in self-esteem, and thus have more prone to depression because you have all these changes going on. So yeah, I just at some point, kind of hit like a hole, got into a hole there. And so yeah, I just want to say I was moody and sad, and had a lot of feelings, and I channeled it through poetry. Everyone's poetry starts off bad. Like, just keep writing. You know what I mean? I don't want to read what I wrote when I was like 12. I remember my first poem was inspired by Pink Floyd's "Hey You," and like that's just I was like listening to it and then I started writing. But yeah, and I mean I was like a little rebellious, but rebelling to my parents it's like the funniest thing ever. Like, I would wear like purple lipstick when I got to school, and then I would take it off before I went home. You know what I mean? Or I would lie about where I was, but I was like literally just hanging out with my friends. Like, I wasn't doing anything actually crazy, right? Or so bad, right? Like, I just wanted to be with my friends. I just wanted to hang out with my friends or see my boyfriend or so yeah, I definitely was just like walking my own path, but I knew to get back in the mold best I could when I got back home, right? When I was walking back to the door, like, it was time to play the part I needed to play. But I mean, my parents knew that I was like
different,
yeah.
Mm-hmm. Is the fetish scene here in Los Angeles, does it work for you?
Honestly, I didn't live here for a few years, and I got back in at the start of this year, and then I jumped back into undergrad, and I just graduated. So
Congratulations.
What was that?
Congratulations.
Thank you. So I haven't spent too much time like being in the scene. Like, it had been so many years, and so I'm just now getting back into it, like going to events or performing at events. I think the nice thing about it is that there's a lot of variety. There's a lot of different events happening in different spaces. There's just so many freaking people here in LA, so that can be nice, right? So there's a lot of opportunity to meet some.
You probably had an easier time finding your crowd here in Los Angeles than you would in Dallas.
Yeah.
I would imagine.
Yeah. I also didn't have a lot of means of being self-efficient while in Dallas, right? So I was like borrowing a friend's car and going to work 5 days a week. Just not in a space where I kind of, had all the free will to do whatever. But yeah, definitely an easier time here in LA. Yeah, I mean, there's, but I'm a little bit of I'm like an introverted extrovert. So like, I don't necessarily have to go to a bunch of events. Like, if I didn't, I would be totally fine.
Just in terms of finding your crowd.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think there's more of that here than maybe New York would be better, but
I've never been to New York, so I can't say. But yeah, absolutely. I'll just, when those sweet moments where you meet somebody and immediately you're like, yes, yep, we are going to be in each other's lives forever, I hope, as long as we upkeep it. But I've definitely met a couple people here like that, where I'm like, I'm keeping you. So I have people in like Dallas or Vegas, and I'm like, I'm keeping you, and we keep each other.
That's great.
Yeah.
Tell me about latex. What do you love about latex?
Oh my gosh, the look, the feel.
It almost looks like you're painted.
I love that. I would love to be painted on, or for me, the big thing is the feeling when I'm wearing it.
What is it? Describe the feeling. I assume you feel like you're being hugged.
I mean, for me, it's like the feeling I get in my head, I want to say. But yeah, it kind of just feels like a hug in a way. I mean, you're like just a little slinky. Yeah, it feels it's like a sensory diet. I'm being like compressed in a good way. I like the ritual of it, the ritualistic aspect, right? Like you have to be careful when you're putting it on because it's so delicate. And then there's like a whole cleanup process, or you have to like shine yourself while you're in it, or have someone else shine you, which is super fun. I like that, especially when you're partaking in it, with other people. The ritual of it, I embrace maybe a little bit more. I just feel like unstoppable in latex. I don't know. It feels very sexy, or like seeing myself in it. I'm like, yeah, this feels right. Like I feel like myself. Yeah.
You look great in it.
Thank you.
Let me ask you one last question. What would you say is the most important thing you've learned in your 26 years? 26?
24.
24.
Most important thing I've learned?
You're young, so you can get an out here.
No, I don't want an out. That's funny because I was just thinking the only way out is through. Do what you desire and want and need. You know yourself best. And the scariest part is going through. That's the scariest part, jumping. That's it. It's the psyche right before you jump. But the fall is so fucking beautiful. Like just embrace it. Allow yourself to do it because you know what you need. And you have to persist like that. We're large, we contain multitudes.
Lilith, thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're amazing.
Thank you.
I wish you all the luck in the world here in LA.
We did it.
You did it. You did a great job. Even though Soft White Underbelly consists of a lot of videos, it's really still a photography project to me. And if you appreciate the photography, sometimes it's difficult to enjoy it when it's scrolling down the screen, which is the only option I had in this horizontal format on YouTube. So last year we came out with the first Soft White Underbelly book, which is a collection of the best portraits from the thousands of interviews I've done. Each portrait in this book is accompanied by an interesting quote from the person's interview.
Oh my God.
There's more.
Wow. These aren't as bad as I thought. I look like a witch.
I will not be reprinting this book when it sells out. So once it's gone for good. You can order yours at softwhiteunderbelly.org. $125, $150 for a signed copy. And thank you for watching.